Alrighty, y'all, welcome back. And in this video, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be working on this address logic. I'm hoping that I can knock out 4 and 5 in this video. However, we'll see how far we get. But basically, just a little recap. In the last video, what we did is we had the logic to add and remove items from our cart. Now, before we go and actually order these, of course, we need to be able to manage our addresses to be able to say where do we want to receive these items. So that's what we're going to be doing today. And just to pop in TNBOS to give you a little overview of what we're going to be doing. So right now we're going to be building out this My Address Pages, and it's just going to have this little section at the top, and we can click this button to add new addresses. Of course, fill out this form. And then once we have an address, it's going to appear here, and we could either delete it or edit it. So pretty simple logic, and also pretty critical, because then whenever we go to place an order, we can just go ahead and choose an address, and of course that's where our order is going to be sent. So now that we got that overview out of the way, let's go ahead and start building out this page. So let me hop into seeing what we have for our address pages, and all it says is by address right now. So let's go find in files, by address, and first of all, let's just get the padding situated for all this. Okay, so on the product details page, we have a padding of 24 pixels 32. So there we go. Actually, what was it on TNBOS? Same thing, 24 pixels 32. Okay, so after this we have a section heading, and let me actually just pull it up on TNBOS since we're going to be copying a bunch of stuff from there. So that would be by addresses and the styles. Okay. So we have a section heading that says My Addresses, and the right content is a button that basically takes you to the By Address Details page. Okay. So we already got a section heading component. Let's figure out where we use that. Okay, so on our cell products, we already were using the section heading component, so this one's going to have a section heading as well. And let me just check my overall layout. So the container for this, oh, it's not even flex or anything, and that is just because we have 2 divs in there. So that should work, actually. Okay. So anyways, for the section heading, why am I styling this one? Margin bottom. So we'll see what we need to do. So for the section heading, we're just going to say My Addresses, and the right content is going to be render add address button. And for this render add address button, we're going to need to import our button component and then MDI plus. Wonder if I can get, okay. So button component is render add address button, render address button, and then the MDI plus. And I forgot, actually, why is, all right, I need to turn my AC off also. 1 second. Ooh. Okay, there we go. All right, now what I'm wondering is for cell products, whenever we render this button, we didn't have any icon for it, but I think I do want an icon. Yeah, let's keep things consistent here. All right, so this is kind of not really part of this session. HI. Oh wait, this is on the button. All right, so the button has a left on click and text, left on click and text. And can I simplify the naming of this? Yeah, maybe I just say render button, since this is the only button in this component. Okay. Now on click, handle add address click. Okay, so let's just log something out for now. So console log add address. And I'm also going to simplify this to handle button click. So by the way, that fly is still flying around me, in case anyone wanted to, know about the fly update. Okay, so this is interesting. So first of all, the button looks a little bit weird. Oh, I know why. That is because in my icon buttons, I have it where the border radius is 6. Yeah, but we just want to make that 50% like normal. Now in cell, same thing. We can also just have it without any icons. All right. Does the icon look better or not? Actually, let me just remove all icons. Keep it simple for now. Again, from here, we're focusing on functionality, not design at the moment. Although design is a very important part of software development, just don't want to do too many things at once here. Just keep it nice and simple. Okay. So add button, by my addresses, add, and then when I click it, it should say add address. And why am I getting these errors? Okay, add address, add address, add address. Beautiful. Okay. So the next thing I want to do here is render my addresses or the empty state. So let's work on that. So, okay, same thing with products. Actually, let's all right, so these products, yeah, we have an empty state for the cell products as well. Okay. All right, empty text here. So here I am having the section heading, then rendering content in. For the content, if I don't have anything to display, which is products in this case, but it's going to be addresses, I'm just going to render this empty text component. So let's see what I had in new TNBOS. Yeah, pretty much the same thing. Beautiful. Beautiful. Okay. Okay, this is nice. This is nice. Okay. All right. So where am I now? TNBOS render button. I'm going to say render content. Address list we didn't create yet, but if I do, I'm going to render addresses. So if, all right, I'll just render null for here. And then this empty text, we'll just go ahead and test out our empty state. So for render content, what we can do is say, all right, let's see what we're working with first of all. All right, that looks pretty good. And just so we can see, so this empty text component has a padding of 16, which is beautiful. All right, so my addresses, if you don't have any addresses, it says no addresses to display. Great, 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 great. Now I'm wondering what we can do from here Probably just spelled out the logic to add it, huh? Yeah. Yeah, let's do that. All right. So in TNBOS, when you add address, it takes you to the address details page. So let's do the same. All right. So styling, what other styling are we going to need? The addresses, which we don't have yet, but we'll come back to that. All right. And here's another question. Do we want to do the same logic as editing products where we have active by address? I believe so, because that design pattern worked well before. So why not do it again? Yeah, that'll work. Okay. So what we're going to do is we are going to first look at our manager. And what's going on here? Don't need that. Oh my God, 2 flies now. You have got to be kidding me. Okay. All right. So we have an active product, and this gets set right before we navigate to one of our pages. Yeah. So we're going to follow this same logic where whenever we edit something, we're going to be setting the active address and then navigating to the page. And then whenever we are creating a new one, we'll just set it equal to null and then navigate to that same page. And then when we're at the page, we can just check if we have an active address or not. If we do, we must be editing one. If not, then we must be creating one. So for here, let me just go ahead and, okay. So I need to type out my address first. Oh my God, these bugs are, I think I might have to go to the, pretty gross too. Just these random bugs flying around. Hope they don't get my coffee or anything. Okay, so let's go ahead and type out the address. All right, so new types addresses, and just like basically everything else. Or actually, let's see what the let's get my addresses. Okay. So let's tell ChatGPT to create a TypeScript interface for this. And while it's doing that, what I can do is kind of steal some other stuff here. So address. All right. So what we are going to be doing is we are going to be creating a slice for address. The type of it extends from created and modified. Created and modified. It also has an ID. So address 1, 2, city, state, and the owner. So address 1, 2, city, state, country. Address 1, 2, city, state, country. Zip code is a string and owner is a number. So copy those. Put them under my address. Alphabetize and should be good. ID, types, create, modify, generic. Okay. All right. Now, as usual, just going to go ahead and register these in my main types index. Okay. So asset pairs address. So asset pairs. All right. So we created the address, which is a single one, and addresses, which is the shape of how it's going to be stored in Redux. Basically, the addresses keyed by their ID And now let me just sort this. All right. So this is a shape that we're going to be storing. Looking good. Now, as always, before I can create this in my store, just want to create some constants for it. So addresses, make sure it's spelled right, looking good. And now I can go ahead and create a slice. So in my store, create a new TypeScript file for addresses. And what do we need for these? Let me think. So we are going to be setting an individual one, for example, whenever we create one, setting multiple ones, for example, whenever we go to this page, we just want to fetch all our addresses. Actually, we'll probably fetch them as soon as we log into the app. That's probably more efficient. And unset, which is the equivalent of deleting. So I think we can just copy all this logic. Okay. So for my addresses, first of all, this is going to be my constant, which is addresses. And then instead of cores, all right, cores can be replaced by addresses, and core is going to be replaced by address. And then cores is going to be replaced by addresses. Okay, now let's read through this. So I have an address slice. Of course, everything internally uses the addresses constant, importing addresses, initial state is just empty dict. And then initial state, reducer set address. We're going to be passing in an address, keying it under ID. To set multiple addresses, we're going to be passing in a list of addresses. And then we're just going to be keying all those by ID. And then to delete an address, we just delete that slice or that object under the address ID, which is just a number. Export everything, set addresses, unset address reducer, good to go. Okay. Now under my store, now that we got a new slice, let's go ahead and just, let's see, asset pair, and then address above that. So addresses, we will say that we have a new slice called addresses, and for the value of that, we'll set that equal to addresses reducer. And now hopefully in our Redux store, we should see addresses looking good. Okay. Now what we're going to need to do, now that we have those in our store, is we're going to need to write a selector eventually to pluck those off. So in my store index, what I can do is I can say whenever we call the selector function get addresses, then just give me the data under state addresses, basically that slice of our Redux store. And we don't need this just yet, but we will in just a second. Okay. So now what we want to do is we want to go ahead and say we're going to have an updated slice in our manager for active address. And this is going to determine if we're creating or editing an address. So first thing we're going to need to do is import address. So types addresses, we're going to import address. And then for active address, that's either going to be equal to an address or null. And that's going to all be stored under the manager. Now in the store for the manager, what we need to do is we need to update initial state to say that by default active address is equal to null. All right. And then to update this, yeah. Okay. Looking good, looking good. And now let me just check the manager. Okay, probably gonna need to log out, log back in. Okay. So now I have active address being able to store or being stored in my manager slice. So now what we can do is we can say that whenever we click this button, make sure that this is set to null and then navigate to that page. So to do that, let's just steal it from somewhere else. Okay, update manager. Actually, I can do this, might be easier. So on the handle button click, which is the same as this logic right here, I'm going to be dispatching update manager and then navigating to this page, create edit product. Now the question becomes, do I even have this page? So page, shop, no. So this is going to be by, what was my naming convention? By address details. Yeah, by product details, by address details. Okay. So let me just get the name of this. All right. So we're going to be creating a new page, and we'll just keep the styles empty at first. And refactor, rename. Okay. So this page is just going to be empty for now. And we'll just say by address details. And now we have an empty page component. What we can do is just register a URL for it. So, all right, so let me first just import the page by address details. And again, this page is going to have our add or edit form on it. And now what I can do is say something like create edit address. All right. So the route by / create edit address should go to by address details. But does it? That's the $1 million question. So by / create edit address should go to by address details. Fantastic. Now, actually, let me go ahead and add some padding right now. Just for some reason, I hate when things are butted up against the corner. Should probably standardize this padding too in a bit. But yeah, do that a little bit later on. All right, so now the goal is to programmatically go to this by address details page. So that's going to happen whenever we click the button. In order to do that, we first need to get this dispatch logic, which we don't have already. So dispatch is going to require use dispatch and app dispatch. And use dispatch is going to come from the React Redux. And then we should be able to pluck off this use dispatch. All right, that is looking good. And then what else are we going to need? Update manager to set. All right, and then navigate we're going to need. So navigate, use navigate, come from React Router DOM hook. And then we just are going to use navigate like this. Nice and easy here. All right, now with all of those imports, what we can do is update our handle button click. And okay, so first of all, where are we navigating to? And the goal is to navigate to shop by create address. So we are going to navigate to shop by create edit address. And before we do that, what we need to do is wait for it, store manager. Okay. So what we're going to do whenever we click this add button right here is we're first going to update our manager, and then to set active address to null, just in case there's anything in there. And then we're going to redirect to this page. So update manager, set it to null, beautiful, active address, and then be taken to this page. Looking good. Okay. All right, we are doing awesome here. Let's see where we go from here. Okay. So I think what I want to do I'm just wondering where I can kind of steal some of this logic from. So now we basically have to create the form right here. And I think for this, what I can do, yeah. So I'm thinking we can just steal a lot of the logic from the cell create edit product. In other words, we need a form here to edit the address, and we already have this form here, although the styling isn't that pretty. And the only hesitation I have before kind of having ChatGPT help us out is that this uses form data because it uses an image. However, we are not going to need form data because we don't have any image involved with an address. So in that case, also I need to do some validation here. Let me make a little note. Okay. All right. So in that case, we aren't going to need a lot of this. However, I think ChatGPT can still help us out. But actually, let's do this. Interesting. Okay. Let's just give ChatGPT some work, and I'll say we can kind of edit that. So here are my update the by address details component. Support addresses. Address creation. Oops, I didn't even give it the component, but it doesn't really matter. Okay, so let me just start importing everything that we're going to need. Dispatcher products, create, edit, yada yada. Don't need any of that, but types and styles. So products we aren't going to need. And for development, the first time we submit this, we can just log out the values to make sure our form is working correctly. And then what we'll do is we will write our API functionality in dispatchers to kind of hook everything up with the API. But for now, should be good. Okay. All right, so what are you coming up with, ChatGPT? Dispatch, need that as well. Preview. And then after this, we're going to navigate back. So, okay. So we're going to submit the form and then navigate them back to the address page. And then we need the initial values. So initial values, type form values. That's interesting. Interesting. All right, so edit. And then I'll say type of form values equal type of initial values. All right. So I also want to just look at my address and see what's going on with this. So types of the address. Okay, I've created modified NID, which I don't need. What do I need? Address 1, address 2, city and country. Address 1, address 2, city and country. And then the owner doesn't need to be submitted. Just state and zip code. State and zip code. Okay. Looking good. Next, I just need my form. And I'm wondering if there's an easier way to do this. So for formic form, yeah, let's just steal one of these. Core modal. Okay. So next, what I'm going to do is this. Inside this container, it's going to have a form. And the input, okay. So let's just do address 1 and address 2 for now. Oh, I need the name too. Okay. So initial values on submit validation schema. This gotta have in alphabetical order or it's annoying. Okay. So submit. All right. So for the validation schema of address 1 and address 2, then those are the values. Now on submit, for handling the submit logic, what I can do is I can just treat this very easy. Okay. All right, so right here, we are just kind of patching together a bunch of different stuff. Got a bunch of imports that we don't need yet. And just seeing what we will need in the future. So no checkbox needed. No file input. Do we need a close? No. Do we need an icon? No. Okay. So I should have some kind of form on there now. So let's see. So I'm gonna go to my addresses, add address. This looks good for now. And then I'm just gonna have 456 Amy Lane, 123. Okay, just logging out these addresses. And why am I logging out? Oh, I see. Interesting. Okay. City, country, state, zip code. Form values. All right. Cool. All right. So I got address 1, address 2, and then we're doing city, country, state, and zip code. So in TNBOS, we're doing city, state, country, zip code. City, state, zip code, and country. All right, so same thing, and then make sure, okay, so city, state is called state, zip code is snake case, and then for the country, okay, I had this a little bit different too. So before I must have had it that accepts country codes on the back end, but now I just want to have it accept a country, which are going to come from country options. But either way, let's get validation for city, state, and zip code. All right, so for city, it's just going to be a string. And then for state and zip code, which zip code is snake case, those are also going to be strings. Now for these country options, let me see what I had for this. Okay. So let's just keep the same kind of standard that we're doing right here. Okay. So in other words, what we're going to do for these options for countries, eventually I'm going to find some library, and then we can, one second. Yeah. And then what we'll do is we'll just use that library to get a list of countries. But for right now, I just want to kind of hard code everything in. So this is going to be India and Nigeria. And for the select, let me just see something real quick. So for the select options, it's going to take a select option, and this is going to have, okay, a display name is optional and the value is required. So the display name, okay, and the value. So what I can do for this, this will make validation a little bit easier, where by default, let me actually make sure that I have something. Okay, so by default, it'll just have this little hyphen, and then the value internally is just going to be 0, and then I can just validate if they have anything selected, and then hopefully submit that, check it out. All right, looking good, looking good, looking good, looking good. Okay. So now what did I miss validation for? The country, right? All right, TNBOS, how are you validating country? So string required is a valid country, and you say country is a required field, and for the validation, it's that country code is not equal to the default select option. Interesting, interesting, interesting. Oh, this is good. This is good. Okay. So actually, I think I want this logic. This is a little bit better. So actually, where is this? I really like this. So shop constants forms. So actually, let me do this. Yeah. I am actually going to make a new constants directory, top level, and I'm going to make a new forms attribute here. And for this, I'm going to give it this default select option. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to import this default select option, and then I can first of all use it in place of here, and also in place of the value, right? Yeah, so then I don't even need this display name value nonsense. I can just say that the value of these is equal to either the hyphen or India, Nigeria, USA, whatever. All right. And then in my validation, that'll make it pretty easy, because for the country, I can just say that in order to be valid, and also I don't want to, all right. So for the country validation, what I can do is I can just validate that the country, actually let me just say the value that gets passed in is not equal to the default select option. So that means that if they have this selected, it's going to say country is a required field, and it's only valid if you select one. That is looking nice. Okay. So now what else needs done here? Let me just review my logic so far. This is good. All my validation taken care of. Don't need this anymore. This is oh, whooping cough. All right. Close, tabs to the right, and now we can probably start working on my API logic, since I think I'm ready to submit this data now. Yeah. Yep. Okay. So first, let me go ahead and actually, how are we gonna do this? Okay, let's just start with the API logic as usual. So under types, just gonna get the name of this, refactory name addresses, since this file is gonna be named the same thing. And now let's just say that, so it's going to be the same. What do we just create? Cart products. And we're going to be creating, deleting, getting, and editing. Actually, same thing with products. Great. Yeah, this is what we want. Okay. Oh, and you know what? We actually don't want. All right. So this is the endpoint. However, we don't want authorization form headers. We just need authorization headers for everything, because we are not working with any form data. And I'm going to replace products with address. All right. Delete, get addresses. All right. So now what I can do is first review this. Okay. So for my address endpoints, I can create an address, I can delete one, I can get a list of all my addresses, or I can update one of my addresses. The base endpoint for this is API addresses. Now for creating an address, first of all, this form data is incorrect. So instead of that, so we're going to be creating a new type of addresses, and it's going to be similar to this, because we want to say create address request. Now, when you're creating an address, what information do you need to pass up? And let's find out the hard way. Okay. So you need an address 1, an address 2, which is optional, but we'll actually keep it required, because if we don't have one, we can just pass in an empty string. All right, address 1, address 2, city, state, country, zip. All right, so we're gonna be using address 1, address 2, city, state, country, and zip code. So address 1 is 123 Maple Lane. For address 2, we'll keep this as empty string. City is Cityville. State is Statey. Actually, we'll just do NY. The country, say USA, and the zip code is 12345. All right, now let's send this and check it out. So address, make a TypeScript interface for this. Here is TypeScript interface for what you just gave me. Address 1, address 2, city, state, country, and zip code. All right. So this is going to be the create address request. Now I just need the for addresses, we want to say create address request, create address request, and then when we are creating that address, what we're going to need to pass in is the data for create address request. And same thing whenever we are updating it. Okay. So now let's read through this one more time. So this was all good. Yep. Okay. So when creating an address, I'm going to be passing in create address request, which is this data right here. And then I'm going to get back an address object. And I just need my headers for that. Now when deleting an address, I'm just going to pass in the ID of the address, and it's not going to return anything. Now when getting addresses, I don't pass in anything. I just ask for their addresses, and it gives me back a list of them. And then when updating an address, I need to give the ID, tell me what one I'm updating, and then the data of pretty much whatever I want to update it to. Okay. So that is cool. And now what I can do is just make my dispatcher functions. All right, now in my dispatcher, I'm gonna go ahead and make a new TypeScript file, addresses. And let me do this. Okay, ChatGPT, got another one for you. This is coding standard. Create functions for me for addresses. And then I also need to give it my address is here, and hopefully it can do its thing. All right. So my dispatchers are going to, I'm going to have 1, 2, 3, 4. And that is, all right, create, delete, get, and update. Set undate, set from store addresses. All right, let's see what we got going on here. And update address. Actually, don't do this. All right, so update address. And and I should have given it something else. So let's just say dispatcher products. Just want to find out my standard for updating. All right. So for updating, you also set that. And why? Okay, here we go. All right. So for my dispatcher functions, it called create, delete, get, and update. Create, delete, get, and update. These were my 3 store functions, which were to set multiple, and unset. Okay, so far so good. Now when you're creating an address, you need to pass in that data. It's going to hit the endpoint, and then it's going to set it in the store. When you're deleting it, you just need to give it an ID. Hits the endpoint and then deletes it in the store by unsetting it. When you get all your addresses, you don't need to give it anything. You just get the list that it comes back with, and then set that data in your store. And then when you're updating it, you need to give it the ID of when you're updating data. Make the request on the back end, and then set it in your store with set addresses. Okay. So now what we can do is we can borrow some more logic. And we're going to borrow this from whenever we were working with products. Actually, this may not be the best example. Let's do it with, maybe one of the modals. Core modal. Okay. Oh, wait, I forgot. What form do I have that doesn't involve this? You know what? Maybe we should do it the hard way. All right. What is going on outside? Okay, so active product. Yeah, let's do this. Let's just start kind of grinding this out. Okay, so for active product, that's one thing we need to determine. However, instead of active product, we need to figure out if we have an active address. So in the types, the manager, that field was called active address. Okay. So if you have an active address, it means you're trying to edit something. If not, you're just trying to update something. So let's go ahead and use the same logic right here. So I'll say convert this to this format. So I don't have to type out all of those. Assuming you have an active address similar to active product, the equivalent would be this. Beautiful, 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 beautiful. And thank you for saving me from typing out all that. And all right, so the initial values of the form are dependent on if you have an active address or not. City, state, country, zip code, all of that looks good still. All right, good to go. And then I will also say, okay, I don't think I need to do any of this. Yeah, I can just copy this though. And I'll put a try catch. All right, so whenever you are submitting it, try to do something like this, and then if you get an error, then what we want to do is something like this. All right. So first, let's go ahead and replace Actually, let's get our dispatchers. Let's import everything that we're gonna need to import. All right, so dispatchers from address. What we are doing with the swarm is we are either creating address or updating an address. And then first of all, I'm just gonna replace active product, the code that we stole, with active address. And then what we are saying, let me patch this together. By addresses. All right, so now all right. So I think this is the bulk of the logic. Now let's actually review what we just wrote. Okay. So the initial values are going to be dependent on if you have an active address. Basically, if you have an active address, use all of these initial values. If not, use empty strings. Now, whenever you handle submit, what it's going to do is it's going to check if you have an active address or not. If you already have an active address, that means you're trying to update it. And whenever you update it, what you need to do is you need to pass the ID in of the address that you're updating, which comes from active address ID, and also the updated data, which is just going to be the form data, which is just going to be these values. Then after that's successful, it's just going to say product updated, and this is wrong. Should say address updated in a nice display toast. Now, if you don't have an active address, that means you're creating one for the very first time, and you just pass in those form values. It's going to say address created, and then no matter whether you're updating or adding a new one, after it's just going to take you to your address pages so you can see what you just did. Now, if you get an error, then we want to log it out, and for the error that we're going to display to you, if you have an active address, it's going to say error updating your address. Otherwise, if you're trying to create one, error creating address, and all of that should be good. Imports are looking good, so now let's go ahead and test this. And actually on our address page right here, we won't see anything because we aren't rendering those addresses yet. But let me just go ahead and try to create one at first. All right, so hopefully if this works, let me make sure I just don't have any in my Redux store already. Okay, so we're gonna submit this, and it looks like it created it, and then, yep, it set it in my store right here. Okay, cool. So it still says no addresses to display. However, what we can do now is we can build these address cards. And as part of those address cards, we have the edit and delete logic right there. So whenever we click this edit, what it's going to do is it's going to set the active address and then take us back to this page. And then delete, of course, we can just delete it. You know, no need to navigate to a new page whenever we delete something. We can just delete it, and it'll pop up a toast to say address deleted. All right. So on that note, let's go ahead and make these address cards next. So address details, this seems to be working for now. Close out of you. Don't need these yet. Gonna fetch you later. Fetch you later, bruh. And then for this, what did I make changes here? Just added a to-do, which is cool. Oh yeah, better validation, and I'll change this as well. Okay, so close out of you, close out of you, close out of you, close out of you, close out of boom, 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 close out of you, boom, 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 close out of you, boom, boom, boom. Okay. Okay. By addresses. Now, here, we want to check if you actually have addresses now that we got that logic taken care of. All right. So addresses are just going to come from this, the address list. Huh, that's easier. Didn't even think about doing that. But yeah, let's just do that. Okay. So what we need to do is select the addresses from our Redux store. So how do we do that? Well, we already made, I think we made, yep, this get addresses selector. And now what I'm going to do is just steal a little something here. All right, so I'm just going to steal this selector. It's going to come from React Redux. And then I'm also going to steal something, selectors. Okay. When possible, steal code from other places on your app so you don't have to type. That's pretty much the advice I give to myself every day. Okay, so now we're getting addresses from the store, and what I also want to do is I want to use this little pattern here, this nifty little thing, and let me import everything that I need. All right. So all I'm doing here is just converting these addresses to a list by basically getting the values of everything since they're keyed by ID. And then whenever I'm rendering content, I can do this. Basically, if you have addresses, then we're going to be rendering them eventually. If not, then render this empty state. And now we actually do have an address, so we don't render that empty state anymore. But now we got to render the actual address cards. So in order to do that, okay. So for render addresses, I'm gonna iterate over that address list, and for each one, just convert it to an address card. And that's gonna be stored, or it's gonna be rendered here in this addresses section. So first of all, let's make a container for where these cards are gonna go, and then we'll go ahead and create the cards. And now from my breakpoints, I want to standardize these as well. Okay. All right, so for my breakpoints, where am I breaking at? 800 and 1,000, so that's mobile and tablet. So I'll say for mobile, tablet. Okay. So mobile view, I'm only going to display one column. Tablet view, I'm going to display two columns. And then any more than that, I'll display 3. And then we'll kind of play around with that, see how it looks. Might have to adjust it later on, but for now, you know, it's responsive enough for kind of just testing things out. Okay, so after this, I'm actually going to need my address card component, and that is this right here. Fascinating. So this card, what we do, oh, I see what we did. Oh, okay, I see what's going on here. So I actually made another address card component, and this has all my address information on it with optional write content. And the reason for this is because so I have the address displayed right here, but this isn't the only place where I want to render the address. I also am rendering it here on my orders page, so that's why I made this part a reusable component. Now in addition, you see that on your My Address pages, each address has a drop down of what you can do. However, when it's on your orders page, it doesn't have that drop down. So that's why I kind of built it out this way, and that's the same logic that I'm going to go with in this new app. So we'll make a new component called address card, and this will have all kind of the basic styling on it. Yeah, I don't have a name on any of these addresses. I just realized, huh? Interesting. Well, we'll take care of that later. For now, let's just go ahead and copy this address card component. So we got another component for our component library, which is an address card. And for the styles, what we can do is just format these to our styles. For the full name, I believe we're just getting rid of that straight up. Okay. Okay. I don't need to do this either. All right. So let's just do this. So we're going to have a left and a right section. Left is where the address is going to go, and the right is where an optional right content is going to go, which is going to be that drop down. Now for the left, I don't need a full name, although we're going to have to add a name later on. We just kind of forgot it for now. We don't have this country list yet. For the types, what we're going to do is we're going to import address and some functional component. And for the address card, which is this component, is going to take an address and optional right content. And for this, do we want to pluck everything off here? Yeah, why not? So we'll say address 1. It's going to render on top. Address 2, we can just replace it by address 2. No need for a full name. For render country name, we'll just say country, and that's in a div. All right, and then for zip code, all right. So for this address card, it's gonna have border, box shadow. All right. All right, so we're gonna pass in address, right content. It's gonna render these on the left, optional right content on the right. Looking good. All right, cool. So address card is taken care of, and now what we need to do is still create this address. Okay. So then with that component, we're going to be using it and basically just in a parent component that we're going to be creating just for this my addresses page. We basically use this component, but we form the drop-down menu that we pass in before. Okay. And no styling needed. So let's actually, this is interesting as well. Yeah, let's actually copy this because that might be easier. Okay. So first of all, we want our component from address card. Now with unsetting the address, what we are getting, all right, so that is going to be coming from our dispatchers. Our address dispatchers. All right, so we are going to want to be able to delete an address whenever we call this delete. And what we are going to be doing All right, a lot of patching together here. Drop down menu, page, don't need that, don't need that. Okay. Toast type. Come from enums. Toast. Set this, don't need this. Drop down menu from components. And let's just go edit. Okay. All right, pretty much just getting everything functional for now. Then I gotta do a quick mini self-review. Toast type, success. All right, so now let's figure out what I just did. Okay, so for this address, what we are going to do is we're pretty much gonna use this address card, and we're gonna use a right drop-down menu for the right component. So we're importing the address card, drop-down menu. We're going to be deleting the address whenever we click the drop-down menu and choose delete. So we're going to need that dispatcher function here, toast type, just to display our toast. From our types, we are importing address, and we have to rename this because the component is named address. Then our dispatch function and our component typing. Then for the address props, we're just going to be passing in an address, and then we are saying that we're displaying the address card, and on the right we're displaying a drop-down menu. When you edit, it's gonna log out edit for now. Gonna change this to actually update the active address, then navigate to that page, but just have that as a to-do for now. And then on delete, what we can do is we can call this delete address by passing in the address ID, and it says address deleted. And all right, so a couple things that we can do from here before we even start testing everything out is that let's do the cell products in here. Yeah, okay. So first I just want to put this in a try catch. So and for the catch, all right. So whenever you click delete, it's going to try to delete it, and then all right. So when you click delete, try to delete it, make a request to the backend, and then delete it in my Redux store. And then display the toast address deleted. Now if you get an error, then just log it out and display the error toast that says error deleting address. Now whenever you click edit, what it's going to do is something similar to this. It's going to update manager and navigate you to that page. So store manager. Then we need navigate from React Router DOM, because when editing, you go to a new page. And then for navigate, you pluck it from here. And then for this, it's actually the same thing. So whenever you click edit, you're going to update the manager and set the active address to basically the one that you are editing. And then you're going to navigate to create edit address page, which will now have an active address. All right, that looks good so far. And now what we need to do is just actually render these addresses out instead of returning null right here. Okay. So create this function to render addresses, but first we need to import that. So import that address component we were just working on, and then create this function to render addresses. Render addresses, and the key is the address ID. And then if you have addresses, then render them as address cards in this address section. Okay. So now let's see what we're working with. Okay, looking good. Okay. So I can either click to add a new address from there, or I can edit this. Beautiful. And I will say 456 Apple Lane, submit that. All right, address updated, my address updated. And then before I delete this, I do want to add some padding to this. And what was my padding here? 12, I think. All right, margin bottom 12, but we move that away from the section heading so I can have this. So in that case, what I can do for my addresses is I can just say margin top 12. All right. So now that should give me this margin right here. I already saw that editing worked. And actually, let me edit it without any. Address 2 is a required field, and that should not be the case. So let's change this validation right off the bat. So the address details for address 2, it's not required. And then, all right, so no more error, and then submit that, and then, all right, looking good. All right, and then last but not least, make sure deletion works. Address deleted, no addresses to display, looking good. All right, so we can now add, edit, and delete addresses. Yeah, did we knock these two out? So buyer my addresses. This is the UX for everything. Buyer create and edit address. We just tested that out. And we got some to-dos, but I will consider this feature good for now. Yeah, a lot of cleanup to do, but I just want to make sure everything's working correctly for now. Yeah, I think we're looking all right. Now, another thing that I probably want to do is fetch these addresses whenever we log in, since on this page we aren't fetching them anywhere. And I actually don't think that we want to. Yeah. So we actually don't need to fetch our addresses every time we go to this page, because what we can do is whenever we log out and log back in, as part of this like overall app initialization, we could just fetch addresses here. And then whenever we are managing our addresses, like adding and editing new ones, we can just add and edit it right from the store. And then when we come back, let's say navigate away and come back to this page, like we don't need to fetch it again because everything should already be in sync. So yeah, I think we'll save that for later though, since it's kind of out of scope for this video. But for right now, yeah, buyer my addresses, create and edit addresses. So in the next video, what we'll do is we'll go back to this buyer add to cart button. So whenever they're doing this, we'll finish that logic. Remember, we were going to make that a warning modal just to give them a heads up if they're trying to add products from two different sellers to their cart, kind of give them a little bit better indicator what's going on and why they can't do that. And then from there, it's really, yeah, the checkout page where you can basically create an order. And then as part of this page, they would need to select those fancy new addresses that we just created as well. And then really just displaying their orders. All right, so 4 items left to do. Deadline is 6 days away, but I think we're on a good pace. I got a good feeling about this. So yeah, as usual, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next video.